Now, I've got a really important message for Gen Z and the millennials and the later Gen X's that are watching this. So, what we've just seen happen to all of us is we've been put to work for the boomers. They're trying to save Social Security and the whole agenda, anti-immigration, anti-LGBTQ, and of course anti-abortion, is all about making sure that they produce more in the labor force and keep Americans contributing to their Social Security benefits. Also, that they don't have to raise taxes on the 1% of the richest people in America to pay for the rest of the retiring parents and grandparents of most of you watching this. But they get something and we don't. There won't be anything left in the Social Security Trust Fund by that time when we hit the hay. And what's going to happen is we're going to be taking care of our kids and our elders all at the same time. It's going to be stress. But what they did was they engineered a war in Gaza. The whole attack on October 7th, when Israel was attacked, was predetermined, as well as even the election trying to be cheated during the COVID crisis with the mandatory mail-in voting and 6 feet apart at all the voting stations. You'll read about as my characters discover that in the infection. So let's get into it. And hopefully you'll watch this channel. And remember that the truth has value. Class is just an act. COVID-19 happened just about a year before the 2020 election to force a mail-in vote. And then the attack on Gaza happened October 27th, 2023, about 1 year prior to us going to the polls to elect the president again in 2024, initiating what happens to be Project 2025 to reform the government so that the 1% benefit and it's restrictive for all the rest of us, including possibly the First Amendment, the right to free speech, because people that want to bully people and not allowing a dissenting voice come in want to have it encoded and enforced, like China and the crackdown on what they did with the protesters in Hong Kong, which conveniently happened before when COVID was released, which did happen over in the Wuhan area of China, and then spread to Hong Kong where they were having protests in 2019, 2020. And now, of course, in election year, the Gaza war. Well, what would that do? It prevented Muslims who would not vote Republican because a brand of their Christianity supporting them does not allow for any Islamic people and labels them all as jihadist terrorists. Would that turn out to support President Biden or any Democratic regime because they would be supporting Israel, because you almost have to in this country to get the vote of most of the Jewish and Christian populations. So the Muslims couldn't support either, and that would change a vote for where they've been resettled in Michigan. We can continue, but if you like this video, please subscribe and follow the channel. There will be a lot more revealed. In the meanwhile, Bibi Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, was going to be protested and possibly removed from office because of corruption. Where did they get money in Israel? From China. I mean, that's got to be. China is a world powerhouse in production and shipping across the entire globe. So if Bibi Netanyahu had funds and then he was bribed, he wanted to change their court system, and 70% of the Israeli population were against him until they were invaded. They were invaded by a perfect plan by Hamas, who flew over in little gliders, and they knew to hit the police stations and the military security centers first, and they had all the plans before they attacked the Nova Music Festival where the hostages were taken, and that triggered the war. And then Netanyahu's response was to decimate Gaza and destroy the Palestinians, men as well as women and children. And they're going to probably annex Gaza and the West Bank and maybe the Golan Heights and go into Syria, where they've attacked also in Lebanon too. And all this to maybe expand another right-wing regime by Netanyahu and appease them. At the same time, they enforce right-wing regimes or fascist regimes in China and Russia, where Putin has been very backing of Trump, and MAGA, which of course wants to have restrictions on anything that's they consider un-American, which goes against their culture war. So they trade in a deal with the devil. to get all this stuff going. And Islamics who would vote in Michigan, changing their electoral votes, which did end up going to Trump in 2024, would stay home and not support the Democrats, because there's more Democrats registered to vote than there are Republicans. And so they need to always chip away, restricting voting rights, causing groups to stay home and not participate if they were never going to vote for Republicans in the first place. And they won. So we'll be getting into it right here. And remember that the truth has value. Class is just an act.